In the middle of the 6th century BC, the area now known as Persis, modern-day Fars in Iran, was home to a number of significant city-states and tribes. One of these city-states was Anshan, which was a prominent entity under the rule of the Achaemenid dynasty, to which Cyrus belonged. By 559 BC, Cyrus II had succeeded to the throne of Anshan from his forefathers, paving the way for an expansion that was unparalleled in its time. Anshan, while under the nominal control of the Median Empire, was strategically positioned and rich in resources, making it a significant power base for Cyrus. This period saw Cyrus solidifying his rule over Anshan, establishing a strong government and building a capable military force. As Cyrus strengthened his position, the relationship between Anshan and the Median capital, Ecbatana, grew increasingly tense. Cyrus's growing power and his reforms in military and governance began to be seen as a threat by King Astyages of Media. The tension was further exacerbated by differing approaches to the governance and the ambitions of both rulers. Cyrus, aware of the shifting political dynamics, prepared for inevitable conflict. By the mid-6th century BC, the vast and powerful Median Empire, under the rule of King Astyages, exerted its influence over much of what is now Iran. The empire's capital, Ecbatana, stood as a center of power and governance, overseeing a myriad of tribes and city-states, including the strategically significant Anshan. The tension between Cyrus of Anshan and King Astyages of Media reached its climax around 550 BC. The looming conflict, fueled by Cyrus's ambitions and Astyages' attempts to maintain Median dominance, finally erupted into open warfare. The stage was set for a confrontation that would significantly alter the course of ancient history. The battle took place near Pasargadaye, a location that would later become significant as part of the heartland of the Persian Empire. Cyrus's forces, though perhaps smaller in number, were highly motivated and better organized, reflecting Cyrus's reforms and military acumen. The key to Cyrus's strategy lay in his ability to inspire loyalty and his innovative tactics, which contrasted sharply with the more traditional approaches of the Median forces. One of the pivotal moments of the battle was the reported defection of a significant portion of Astyages' army to Cyrus's side. This defection was partly driven by the discontent among Median ranks and the nobility, who were disillusioned with Astyages' rule. Moreover, Cyrus's reputation as a just and capable leader made him a preferable alternative, turning the tide of the battle decisively in his favor. The defeat of Astyages was a symbolic end to the old order. Following his victory, Cyrus took a conciliatory approach towards the conquered Median territories. Instead of plundering, he sought to integrate these regions into his new empire through policies of tolerance and strategic marriages, thereby solidifying his rule and ensuring the loyalty of his new subjects. The aftermath of the battle saw Cyrus establishing Pasargadae as his capital, symbolizing the shift of power from Media to Persis. Under Cyrus's rule, the newly founded Persian Empire rapidly expanded, incorporating diverse cultures and regions into a vast imperial network. His victory at Pasargadae laid the foundational principles of governance and cultural integration that would characterize the Achaemenid Empire throughout its history. After securing his dominion over the Medes, Cyrus the Great's ambitions led him to look westward towards Lydia, a wealthy kingdom renowned for its riches and strategic location in Asia Minor. Lydia, under the rule of King Croesus, represented a substantial prize due to its vast resources and economic strength, which included gold-rich rivers and vibrant trade connections across the Greek world. The conflict between Cyrus and Croesus was ignited by a combination of geopolitical and personal motivations. Croesus, aware of the rising power of Persia under Cyrus, sought to curb this new threat before it could challenge his own realm. According to ancient sources such as Herodotus, who was a renowned historian from ancient Greece, Croesus sought advice from the Oracle of Delphi. The oracle ambiguously predicted that a great empire would fall if Croesus declared war on Cyrus. Misinterpreting this prophecy, Croesus believed it foretold the downfall of the Persian Empire, not realizing it could also signify his own defeat. In 547 BC, the forces of Cyrus and Croesus met near the Lydian capital of Sardis at the Battle of Timbra. The Lydian army, known for its cavalry and wealth, faced the innovative military tactics of Cyrus's Persian army, which included a significant number of archers and infantry, who were well adapted to the terrain and style of combat required in this region. Cyrus's strategy at Thymbra involved the extensive use of cavalry to counter the renowned Lydian horsemen and archers to break the enemy lines. The Persians also cleverly manipulated the battlefield terrain to neutralize the Lydian chariots, which were less effective on the uneven ground. The decisive moment came when Cyrus personally led a flank attack that broke the Lydian lines, leading to a comprehensive victory. Following the battle, Cyrus laid siege to Sardis, the opulent Lydian capital. The siege lasted only 2 weeks before Sardis fell, marking a significant turning point in the campaign. The capture of Sardis brought the treasures of Lydia into Persian hands and marked the effective end of Lydian independence. Cyrus treated Croesus with unexpected leniency, according to some accounts, sparing his life and incorporating him into the Persian court, which helped to stabilize the region and integrate the Lydian elite. The conquest of Lydia extended Persian influence over the Greek city-states of Ionia along the coast of Asia Minor, increasing Persian access to the Aegean Sea and its maritime trade routes. This victory significantly boosted the empire's wealth and influence, integrating the advanced economic systems of Lydia and the cultural vibrancy of the Ionian Greeks into the Persian Empire. After securing his dominion over Asia Minor, Cyrus the Great turned his attention towards one of the most formidable powers of the ancient Near East, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. By the late 6th century BC, Babylon was renowned for its immense wealth, advanced culture and formidable defenses, including the legendary walls of Babylon and the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Cyrus's campaign against Babylon was driven by several strategic and economic motivations. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, under the rule of King Nabonidus, was experiencing political instability and discontent among its people, partly due to Nabonidus's religious reforms, which alienated the powerful priesthood of the god Marduk. Additionally, the Babylonian control of key trade routes and its agricultural wealth presented significant economic incentives for conquest. Cyrus capitalized on the internal dissent within Babylon. In 539 BC, he advanced into Babylonia, positioning himself as a liberator restoring order and traditional religious practices. This strategic positioning won him the support of much of the Babylonian populace, as well as defectors from Nabonidus's forces. The critical battle for Babylon itself was surprisingly brief and less destructive than typical sieges of the era. According to ancient historians, Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River, reducing the water level and allowing his troops to enter the city through the riverbed, bypassing the impregnable walls to minimize civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. Upon entering Babylon, Cyrus's approach to conquest was notably different from that of other conquerors. He did not plunder the city or slaughter its inhabitants. Instead, he famously issued the Cyrus Cylinder, a declaration that not only proclaimed his support for the local religions and customs, but also announced significant reforms, such as the restoration of temples and the return of deported peoples, including the Jews from their Babylonian captivity. Cyrus's policies in Babylon cemented his reputation as a benevolent ruler who respected cultural and religious diversity. His approach facilitated the smooth integration of Babylon into the Persian Empire and ensured the loyalty of his new subjects. The conquest of Babylon marked the zenith of Cyrus's military and political career, significantly enhancing the size, wealth, and diversity of his empire. Cyrus the Great, whose conquests had significantly shaped the ancient world, met his end in 530 BC under circumstances that remain somewhat mysterious and are variously reported by ancient sources. His death marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter under his son, Cambyses II. Towards the end of his reign, Cyrus embarked on a military campaign to the northeast of his empire, targeting the Massagetai, a nomadic tribe residing in the steppes of Central Asia across the Araxes River, modern-day Sirdaria. This campaign was perhaps motivated by several strategic considerations: securing the northeastern borders of the empire, controlling important trade routes, and perhaps a desire to continue the expansion of his empire. The Massagetai were formidable opponents, governed by a warrior queen named Tamiris. The battle involved a series of tactical engagements. Initially, Cyrus used a ruse involving a deliberately abandoned camp filled with wine, which the Massagetae, unfamiliar with wine, consumed, becoming intoxicated. This led to an initial Persian victory where they captured Tamiris's son, who later killed himself in captivity. Enraged by the capture and death of her son, Tamiris gathered her forces for a decisive counterattack. The ensuing battle was fierce, and the Massagetae defeated Cyrus's army, reportedly killing Cyrus in the process. Tamiris is said to have ordered Cyrus's body to be treated with disrespect, a stark contrast to the honor typically accorded to kings. The death of Cyrus was a significant blow to the Persian Empire. However, the empire's administrative and military foundation, which Cyrus had established, ensured its continuity. His son, Cambyses II, succeeded him without apparent contest, indicating a stable succession plan. Cambyses II inherited an empire at the height of its power, but also faced the daunting task of maintaining the vast territories his father had conquered. Eager to emulate his father's expansionist policies, Cambyses set his sights on Egypt, rich in resources and of strategic importance, marking the next chapter in the Persian imperial saga. Following in the footsteps of his father, Cyrus the Great, Cambyses II set his sights on Egypt, a wealthy and strategically vital kingdom at the crossroads of Africa and Asia. Egypt was renowned for its immense agricultural wealth, fostered by the Nile River, and its vast cultural and religious significance. The decision to invade Egypt was driven by both economic motives and the desire to extend Persian influence into North Africa. Understanding the challenges posed by Egypt's formidable geography and the need for a secure supply line across the Sinai Peninsula, Cambyses meticulously prepared for the invasion. One of the first strategic moves was securing alliances with Arab tribes who controlled key oases in the desert. These tribes were crucial for their local knowledge and their control over water sources, which were vital for the survival of Cambyses' army in the harsh desert terrain. Cambyses also employed a well-organized logistical approach, stockpiling supplies and ensuring his troops were well-equipped for the journey and the battles that lay ahead. In 525 BC, Cambyses' army advanced into Egypt. The Persian forces, skilled in the art of warfare and supported by a network of spies and informants, quickly adapted to the challenges posed by the Egyptian landscape. The decisive battle occurred near Pelusium, a strategically crucial city near the eastern borders of Egypt. Legend has it that Cambyses employed psychological warfare during the Battle of Pelusium by placing sacred animals, including cats and ibises, in front of his troops. The Egyptians, reluctant to harm these animals due to their religious beliefs, were put at a significant disadvantage. This clever tactic showcased Cambyses' strategic ingenuity and his willingness to use every available means to secure victory. Following the fall of Pelusium, Cambyses' forces moved swiftly towards Memphis, the ancient capital of Egypt. The city capitulated after a brief siege, and Cambyses was proclaimed pharaoh, marking the start of a new era of Persian rule over Egypt. His reign, however, was marked by attempts to integrate Egyptian customs with Persian administrative practices, which met with varying degrees of success and resistance. Cambyses' rule over Egypt was characterized by significant administrative achievements, but also by cultural and religious tensions. His efforts to meld Persian and Egyptian traditions laid the groundwork for the complex cultural dynamics that would define this period of Egyptian history under Persian rule. Cambyses II, the son of Cyrus the Great, met an untimely and enigmatic end in 522 BC, an event that precipitated a significant leadership crisis within the Persian Empire. His death occurred under circumstances that have been the subject of much speculation and various historical accounts, which often differ in details and interpretations. According to some historical records, including those by Herodotus, Cambyses' return from Egypt was marred by political and personal turmoil. He reportedly received news of a revolt in Persia, led by a usurper claiming to be Bardia, also known as Smerdis, his brother whom Cambyses had secretly ordered killed some years earlier. The news deeply distressed Cambyses, who, in his haste to return and reclaim his throne, accidentally wounded himself with his own sword. The wound became infected, leading to his death shortly thereafter. This version of events, however, is complicated by reports of Cambyses' increasingly erratic behavior towards the end of his reign, including the execution of his brother and other acts of cruelty that might have contributed to instability and discontent among his subjects. The power vacuum left by Cambyses' sudden death led to a period of confusion and potential civil unrest. Darius I, a distant relative of Cambyses and a member of the royal bodyguard, quickly emerged as a key figure in the ensuing power struggle. Darius claimed that the real Bardia had been killed by Cambyses, and the current usurper was an impostor, a Magian priest named Gaumata. In September 522 BC, Darius, with the help of a small group of loyalists, staged a coup and killed the impostor, securing his position as king. This event, known as the assassination of the false Bardia, was critical in legitimizing Darius's claim to the throne. Darius would go on to consolidate his power and initiate a series of reforms that transformed the administrative structure of the empire, fortifying its stability and expanding its territories. Determined to avoid the instability that marked the end of Cambyses II's reign, Darius embarked on a series of sweeping reforms aimed at strengthening and centralizing the imperial administration. Recognizing the challenges of governing a vast and diverse empire, Darius divided the empire into about 20 provinces, called satrapies. Each satrapy was ruled by a satrap, a governor who was often a relative or a trusted member of the Persian nobility. This system not only decentralized power, but also allowed for more efficient local governance, tailored to the unique needs of each province. Darius also introduced a standardized system of taxation, which replaced the irregular tribute payments from different regions. This reform standardized the empire's revenue and ensured a consistent flow of resources to the central treasury, enhancing the empire's economic stability. One of Darius's most enduring legacies was the creation of the Royal Road, a vast network of roads that facilitated rapid communication and troop movement across the empire. Stretching over 1,600 miles from Sardis in Lydia to Susa in Persia, the Royal Road was an engineering marvel that featured regular stations and infrastructure, enabling messages and goods to travel with unprecedented speed. Darius was also a patron of the arts and architecture, commissioning numerous building projects, including the magnificent palace complex at Persepolis. This site served not only as a ceremonial center, but also as a symbol of the empire's wealth and power. The construction of Persepolis and other structures showcased the architectural and artistic achievements of the Persian Empire under Darius's rule. Darius also commissioned the Behistun inscription, which served both as a propaganda tool and a historical record, detailing his rise to power and his victories over various rebels and foreign enemies, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest rulers of the Achaemenid Empire. Darius I, known for his administrative genius and military prowess, faced significant challenges that tested the resilience and strategic depth of the Persian Empire. Among these were the revolts in Egypt and the uprising of the Greek city-states, each marking critical points in his reign. The revolt in Egypt was one of the most significant uprisings during Darius's reign. Egypt had been under Persian control since Cambyses II's conquest in 525 BC. However, resentment against Persian rule had been simmering due to heavy taxation and mandatory labor services. The Egyptians were also deeply religious and culturally distinct from their Persian rulers, who were sometimes seen as disrespecting Egyptian religious and cultural practices. In 486 BC, the Egyptians, capitalizing on the transition of power following Darius's death and the ascension of his son Xerxes I, revolted in an attempt to restore their independence. The revolt was a direct challenge to Persian authority and highlighted the difficulties of maintaining control over distant territories with strong, independent identities. The more famous challenge to Darius's rule came from the Greek city-states, particularly Athens and Eretria. This conflict originated from the support these city-states provided to the Ionian Greeks during their revolt against Persian rule in 499 BC. The Ionian Revolt was a major uprising by the Greek cities of Asia Minor against Persian domination, which they found economically and politically stifling. Darius's response to the Ionian Revolt was swift and brutal, but the involvement of mainland Greek cities in supporting the revolt incensed him further, leading him to vow revenge against Athens and Eretria. This set the stage for the Persian Wars, a series of conflicts that would define his later reign. In 490 BC, Darius launched a punitive expedition directly against Athens and Eretria. The campaign reached its climax at the Battle of Marathon, where the Persian forces, despite their numerical superiority, were defeated by the Athenians. This battle was a significant blow to Persian prestige and demonstrated the formidable resistance posed by the Greek city-states. Despite these military setbacks, Darius's administrative and economic policies helped to stabilize and strengthen the core regions of the Persian Empire. He implemented reforms that improved the empire's bureaucracy, infrastructure, and taxation systems, which were crucial for its long-term stability and expansion. These policies helped to manage the empire more effectively during times of peace and provided resilience against the upheavals caused by military conflicts. Darius I, one of the most formidable rulers of the Achaemenid Empire, passed away in late 486 BC after a reign marked by vast territorial expansion, significant administrative reforms, and both military successes and setbacks. His death came after a failed health recovery, while preparing for another campaign to Egypt, aiming to suppress the revolts that had challenged his authority towards the end of his reign. Xerxes I, Darius's son by his wife Atossa, who was Cyrus the Great's daughter, was chosen over his elder brothers as the successor, possibly due to Atossa's influence and Xerxes's perceived competence and loyalty to his father's vision. Xerxes's ascension to the throne was smooth, with little to no reported opposition, a clear sign of the effective central authority established by Darius and the succession mechanisms he put in place. Upon ascending to the throne in 486 BC, Xerxes inherited an empire at its territorial zenith, yet it was an empire riddled with challenges. These included the need to suppress further the Egyptian revolt, stabilize the vast and diverse territories, and address threats along its western frontiers, particularly from the Greek city-states. Determined to assert his authority and solidify his legitimacy as a ruler, Xerxes sought to address unfinished business left by his father. The Greek city-states, notably Athens, had supported the Ionian Revolt, 499 to 494 BC, against Persian rule, a factor that had led to Darius's military campaign ending at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. Xerxes aimed to avenge this defeat and secure the western frontiers by subjugating Greece completely to Persian rule. Xerxes's preparations for the campaign against Greece were extensive, involving years of planning, the amassing of one of the largest ancient armies ever assembled, and the construction of infrastructure such as bridges over the Hellespont and a canal through the Isthmus of Mount Athos to ensure safe passage for his forces. These preparations underscored his commitment to avenging past defeats and his desire to leave a mark as a ruler who could exceed his father's achievements. In 480 BC, Xerxes launched his massive retaliation, marking the beginning of what would be known as the Second Persian Invasion of Greece. This campaign would test his leadership and the military might of the Persian Empire against the fiercely independent and militarily astute Greek city-states. Following Thermopylae, Xerxes captured and burned Athens, which had been evacuated by its inhabitants. However, the turning point came at the naval battle of Salamis later that year. The Greek fleet, significantly smaller but highly maneuverable, managed to defeat the Persian navy in the narrow straits of Salamis. This defeat was a severe blow to Xerxes, who then withdrew most of his army back to Asia, leaving his general Mardonius to continue the campaign. In the aftermath of their naval defeat at Salamis in 480 BC, the Persian forces, led by King Xerxes I, retreated to Asia Minor, leaving a substantial land force in Greece under the command of Mardonius. This general was determined to complete the conquest of Greece, despite the setbacks at Salamis and Thermopylae. Throughout the winter of 480 to 479 BC, Mardonius regrouped in Thessaly, rebuilding his forces and attempting to negotiate with the Athenians, offering them favorable terms if they would defect from the Greek alliance. The Athenians, showing steadfast loyalty to their Greek allies, refused his offers. In the spring of 479 BC, Mardonius advanced once again into Attica, driving the Athenians into exile on their ships. However, without naval supremacy, his position was precarious. As the Persians occupied Athens for the second time, the Greek city-states convened and formed a rare pan-Hellenic alliance, mustering a large army under the Spartan general Pausanias, who took command of all Greek forces on land. This unified Greek army was something the Persians had not faced before, a significant shift from earlier, more fragmented resistance. The Greeks chose to meet Mardonius in Boeotia, near the town of Plataea. The battle site offered the Greeks strategic advantages, with rough terrain that hindered the Persian cavalry, traditionally one of their strongest arms. The battle itself was protracted and bloody. Initially, there were days of maneuvering, with neither side willing to engage precipitously. Mardonius, confident in the size of his forces, attempted several tactics to provoke the Greeks into attacking, but was unsuccessful. Finally, a misunderstanding regarding supply lines caused the Greeks to reposition, which Mardonius interpreted as a retreat and attacked. In a fierce and chaotic battle, the Greeks, better suited to close combat and spurred by a desire to defend their homeland, managed to break the Persian lines. Mardonius, who was leading from the front, was killed by a Spartan hoplite, and his death effectively shattered the morale of his troops. The death of Mardonius and the rout of his army at Plataea effectively ended Persian land operations in Greece. The battle confirmed the failure of the Persian attempt to subjugate Greece and marked a turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars. The victory at Plataea not only preserved Greek independence, but also marked the beginning of the rise of Athens as a major power in the Mediterranean. It underscored the limits of Persian military power and began a slow decline in their influence in the region, shifting the balance of power significantly. Despite these military setbacks, Xerxes continued to build on the administrative and architectural foundations laid by his father. He completed many of the construction projects initiated by Darius, including the royal palaces at Persepolis. By 465 BC, the internal stability of Xerxes' reign had eroded, exacerbated by the empire's overextension and the immense cost of his military campaigns. Additionally, Xerxes faced challenges managing the vast and culturally diverse empire, which struggled under the weight of its own administrative complexities and regional discontent. Reports suggest that Xerxes was becoming increasingly tyrannical, possibly as a reaction to the threats to his rule, both external and internal. His later years were marked by an intensification of royal prerogatives and a harsh response to dissent, which alienated many in his court. Xerxes I was assassinated in 465 BC by members of his own court. The primary conspirators were Artabanus, the commander of the royal bodyguard, and Aspamitris, a eunuch in Xerxes' court. The assassination plot was daring and complex, involving the murder of Xerxes in his own palace. The exact motives of the conspirators are believed to involve a combination of personal ambition and political dissatisfaction with Xerxes' rule. Artabanus initially succeeded in blaming the murder on Darius, Xerxes' eldest son, who was killed as a result. However, this power play was short-lived. Xerxes' other son, Artaxerxes I, eventually uncovered the true nature of the conspiracy. Artaxerxes I avenged his father's and brother's deaths by killing Artabanus and asserting his claim to the throne. His rise to power marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Achaemenid dynasty, but came at a time when the empire was showing signs of strain from continuous warfare and administrative challenges. The assassination of Xerxes I and the subsequent rise of Artaxerxes I signaled a period of significant transition within the Achaemenid Empire. The leadership change came during a time of growing external pressures and internal instabilities, which would characterize the subsequent reigns of Xerxes' descendants. The empire continued to face challenges, both from within and from the newly emergent powers around its borders, indicating the beginning of a slow but apparent decline. Artaxerxes I, 465 to 424 BC, began his reign under challenging circumstances, with early revolts in Egypt and challenges to his authority. Despite these early setbacks, he managed to maintain the integrity of the empire through diplomatic and military means. Artaxerxes I is noted for his attempts to negotiate peace with the Greeks, culminating in the King's Peace, or Peace of Callias, which temporarily stabilized relations, but ultimately recognized the autonomy of many Greek city-states. Artaxerxes I ascended to the throne of the Achaemenid Empire in 465 BC, following the assassination of his father, Xerxes I. His rise to power was immediately challenged by a series of revolts and political intrigue, reflecting the unstable legacy of his father's reign. Artaxerxes' early years were marked by significant internal challenges, including a major revolt in Egypt in 460 BC. The Egyptians sought to exploit the perceived vulnerability of the new king and aimed to regain their independence from Persian rule. The revolt was supported by Athens, which was keen on extending its influence in the eastern Mediterranean and undermining Persian authority. The Egyptian revolt lasted for several years, demonstrating the difficulties Artaxerxes faced in maintaining control over distant territories. Despite these challenges, Artaxerxes managed to suppress the rebellion with considerable military effort, reaffirming Persian dominance over Egypt. His approach to these revolts included both military actions and administrative reforms to improve governance and reduce the likelihood of future rebellions. Concurrently, Artaxerxes faced ongoing hostilities with the Greek city-states, which had been a thorn in the side of his predecessors. In pursuit of a more stable western frontier, Artaxerxes adopted a diplomatic approach, contrasting with the military strategies of his father and grandfather. His efforts culminated in the negotiation of the King's Peace, or Peace of Callias, around 449 BC. Persian Empire and the Athenian led Delian League. Under the terms of the peace, Persia agreed to stay out of the Greek affairs in Ionia and the Aegean, and Athens agreed to cease its support of Egyptian rebels. This agreement recognized the autonomy of the Greek city-states in Asia Minor, but also confirmed Persian control over Cyprus and Egypt, stabilizing relations and allowing Artaxerxes to focus on internal issues. Artaxerxes' reign is notable for his balance of diplomacy and military action. While he managed to stabilize the vast empire through these means, his reign also saw the slow but steady encroachment of Macedonian power in the northern frontiers and continued pressure from other regional powers. Despite these challenges, Artaxerxes I maintained the integrity of the empire and passed on a relatively stable state to his successors, though the seeds of future conflicts were already sown during his tenure. The death of Artaxerxes, the first in 424 BC, brought an end to a long and stabilizing reign, opening a period of uncertainty and rapid changes that would test the resilience of the Achaemenid Empire's political structure. Artaxerxes I's reign concluded after over 4 decades of rule that saw significant military engagements and substantial diplomatic efforts, including the King's Peace with the Greek city-states. His death created a power vacuum that would lead to a brief but intense period of succession, struggles among his offspring, reflecting the persistent issue of dynastic succession within the empire. Xerxes II, the eldest legitimate son of Artaxerxes I, ascended to the throne, but his reign was extraordinarily brief, lasting only about 45 days. Xerxes II's tenure ended abruptly when he was murdered by his illegitimate brother Sogdianus, who seized the opportunity to claim the throne for himself. The assassination highlighted the brutal reality of Achaemenid palace politics, where power struggles and violence often determined succession instead of rightful heritage. Sogdianus's rule lasted just a few months longer than that of his brother. His reign was marked by his attempts to consolidate power amidst widespread recognition issues and loyalty challenges from various satraps and military factions who had supported Xerxes II, or who held allegiance to other potential claimants. His downfall came swiftly when another brother, Ochus, challenged his legitimacy and authority. Ochus, supported by significant elements within the empire's military and administrative ranks, managed to defeat Sogdianus, executing him and assuming the throne as Darius II. This rapid succession of rulers in a short span highlighted significant vulnerabilities within the imperial governance structure. The assassinations and the quick changes in leadership underscored the inherent challenges in maintaining a stable succession in a vast and culturally diverse empire like that of the Achemenids. Each transition brought with it a potential for rebellion and disunity, affecting the empire's external stability and internal administration. Darius II ascended to the throne of the Achaemenid Empire in 423 BC, after a period of considerable internal strife that saw the assassination of 2 predecessors in quick succession. His reign was characterized by significant challenges, that tested the resilience and administrative coherence of the empire. One of Darius II's earliest and most pressing challenges was dealing with continuous unrest in several satrapies, most notably in Egypt. The Egyptians, who had a long history of rebellion against Persian rule, once again rose up in an attempt to restore their independence. This revolt was more than just a rejection of Persian rule. It was driven by strong nationalist sentiment, worsened by the empire's heavy taxes and forced military service. Darius II had to deploy substantial military resources to suppress these revolts, a task that strained the empire's resources and diverted attention from other potential threats. Concurrently, the Achaemenid Empire became entangled in the Peloponnesian War, a protracted and debilitating conflict between Athens and Sparta, the two leading city-states of Greece. Darius II saw an opportunity in this conflict to weaken the Greek states, which had long posed a threat to the stability of Persian territories in Asia Minor. The Persian strategy involved playing Athens and Sparta against each other by providing financial support to Sparta, while also engaging in diplomatic maneuvers with Athens at various points. This opportunistic foreign policy helped prolong the war and ensured that no single Greek city-state could emerge dominant enough to challenge Persian interests in the region. The support provided to Sparta included funding for building a fleet, which significantly shifted the balance of power in favor of Sparta during the later stages of the war. However, this involvement came at a cost. The need to fund an external conflict drained the Persian treasury and required attention and resources that could have been used to address the empire's internal issues, including the need for administrative reforms and the suppression of revolts in other provinces. Despite these challenges, Darius II managed to maintain the cohesion of the empire, albeit with a weakening grip on some territories. His reign was marked by a pragmatic, if opportunistic, foreign policy that successfully mitigated immediate threats, but also highlighted the inherent vulnerabilities of the empire's overstretched administrative and military structure. As the Achaemenid Empire approached the 4th century BC, it was evident that the vast realm was showing signs of strain. The reign of Darius II concluded in 404 BC amid ongoing administrative challenges and external threats that continued to sap the empire's vitality. Darius II's reign ended after he succumbed to illness in 404 BC, leaving the empire in a precarious state. His final years were marred by weakening control over distant provinces and the empire's involvement in the Peloponnesian War, which, although it drained resources, did not yield significant strategic gains. The transition of power to his son, Artaxerxes II, was relatively smooth, with the new king inheriting the vast but troubled empire. Artaxerxes II, also known as Artaxerxes Minimum, ascended to the throne in a time fraught with difficulties. Early in his reign, he faced external pressures from Greek city-states and significant internal discontent, which culminated in the Great Satrap's Revolt. This revolt was perhaps the most telling sign of the weakening central authority of the Achaemenid rulers. The satrap's revolt was sparked by a combination of factors including heavy taxation, demands for military levies, and the satrap's desires for autonomy. Key satraps across several important regions, including Asia Minor and Egypt, declared their independence from central control, posing a serious threat to the integrity of the empire. Artaxerxes II's response to the revolt was initially slow but became more decisive as the revolt spread. He managed to quell the rebellion through a combination of military action and diplomacy. The king negotiated settlements where possible, offering pardons and autonomy in exchange for loyalty. His approach highlighted a pragmatic grasp of governance, opting to pacify rather than seeking outright conquest. Concurrently, Artaxerxes II had to deal with renewed aggression from Sparta and other Greek city-states, which sought to exploit the empire's internal discord. By supporting different factions within Greece, Artaxerxes managed to keep the Greek states divided and less able to disrupt Persian interests in the region. Despite these challenges, Artaxerxes II's reign saw the restoration of a semblance of stability across the empire. However, the frequent revolts and the need for continuous military campaigns to maintain control indicated that the power and prestige of the Achaemenid Empire were indeed waning. Artaxerxes II's reign, which lasted until 358 BC, was marked by these significant tests to his rule, but also by his ability to maintain coherence in the empire despite ongoing decline. His policies and actions laid the groundwork for subsequent rulers, though the challenges of ruling such a diverse and sprawling empire persisted. The late 4th century BC was a period of significant change for the Achaemenid Empire, marked by the transition from Artaxerxes, the second relatively stable yet defensively oriented reign, to the more aggressive and militaristic approach of his successor, Artaxerxes III. Artaxerxes II passed away in 358 BC after a long reign that, despite its challenges, managed to maintain the coherence of the Achaemenid Empire through diplomatic finesse and a series of compromises with rebellious satraps. His death, however, left the empire at a critical juncture, with several regions only nominally under central control and others in open revolt. Artaxerxes III, originally named Ochus before taking his regnal name, ascended to the throne amid this backdrop of simmering discontent and external threats. Unlike his father, Artaxerxes III adopted a decidedly more assertive and harsh approach to governance. He initiated his reign with a purge of the royal court and government officials, which, although it secured his position, also set the tone for a reign characterized by suspicion and brutality. One of the most notable military campaigns of Artaxerxes III was his effort to recapture Egypt in 343 BC. Egypt had successfully revolted against Persian rule during the reign of Artaxerxes II and had remained independent for nearly 6 decades. The campaign to bring Egypt back under Persian control highlighted Artaxerxes III's strategic and military capabilities. Leading a large army composed of Persian troops and Greek mercenaries, Artaxerxes III launched a multi-pronged invasion of Egypt. After a series of battles where his forces demonstrated both superior tactics and overwhelming force, the Persian army succeeded in defeating the Egyptian forces and capturing their pharaoh, Nectanebo II, who fled to the south. The conquest was marked by considerable brutality, with widespread reports of massacres and the destruction of temples, which was a departure from the empire's traditional policy of religious tolerance. While the recapture of Egypt restored a valuable territory to the empire, the harsh methods employed by Artaxerxes III engendered deep resentment among the Egyptian population, leading to a legacy of instability in the region. Moreover, his internal policies, which included the suppression of any suspected dissent, fostered an atmosphere of fear and resentment within the empire itself. Despite these challenges, Artaxerxes III's reign saw a temporary revival of Persian central authority. However, his assassination in 338 BC by a courtier, possibly as a result of the pervasive climate of fear and suspicion he had fostered, signaled the continuing internal vulnerabilities of the empire. Artaxerxes IV, also known as Arses, took the throne in 338 BC, following the assassination of Artaxerxes III. His reign, however, was short-lived and fraught with difficulties. Artaxerxes IV's tenure was dominated by the increasing influence of the eunuch Bagoas, who held significant power in the court. In 336 BC, after only 2 years as king, Artaxerxes IV and his children were murdered by Bagoas, who sought to place a more manipulable ruler on the throne. Darius III, originally named Kodomanus, succeeded Artaxerxes IV. His rise to power was orchestrated by those within the Persian nobility who opposed Bagoas. Once on the throne, Darius III faced the daunting task of stabilizing an empire weakened by internal strife and preparing for the looming threat of Macedonian aggression. Alexander the Great crossed into Asia Minor in 334 BC, initiating his campaign against the Persian Empire with the Battle of the Granicus. Alexander's military genius and the disciplined Macedonian army presented challenges unlike any the Persians had faced before. By 333 BC, Alexander had secured a foothold in Asia Minor and moved deeper into Persian territories. The Battle of Issus was one of the critical early clashes between Darius III and Alexander. In this battle, despite numerical superiority, the Persian forces were outmaneuvered by Alexander's tactical ingenuity. Darius III was forced to flee the battlefield, an act that severely damaged his prestige and morale among his troops. The Battle of Gaugamela, often called the Battle of Arbela, was the decisive confrontation between Alexander and Darius III. Alexander's forces, though outnumbered, utilized superior tactics to break the Persian lines. Darius III again fled the battlefield, leading to the disintegration of the Persian army and paving the way for Alexander's unimpeded advance into the heart of the Persian Empire. By 330 BC, Alexander had captured Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, setting it ablaze and effectively marking the end of the Persian Empire. Darius III attempted to regroup and continue resisting, but was ultimately murdered by his own troops, who had lost faith in his leadership. This act signified the collapse of Persian resistance and marked the definitive end of the Achaemenid Empire. As we close this chapter on the Achaemenid Empire, from its heights under rulers like Cyrus the Great and Darius I, to its dramatic conclusion with the fall of Darius III and the rise of Alexander the Great, we've traveled through a narrative rich with intrigue, bravery, and transformation. The Achaemenid Empire, with its complex blend of cultures, its administrative innovations, and its vast territorial reach, offers timeless lessons on the dynamics of power, the challenges of governance, and the inevitable cycles of rise and decline that characterize human civilizations. If you found this journey through the history of one of the world's most intriguing empires enlightening, please consider liking this video to support our channel. Share it with friends, family, or anyone you know who loves history. Let's spread the knowledge and appreciation of our shared past. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history, where we uncover the events and figures that have shaped our world. Your engagement helps us keep history alive and kicking in our modern discourse. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more historical explorations that illuminate the complexities and the triumphs of humanity across ages.